Welcome, listeners. This is the Thriving Schoolhouse Podcast. I am your host, Eric Tornfelt. The Thriving Schoolhouse Podcast exists to discuss innovative ideas that will help schools across the country to thrive. There are so many ideas for how to change and innovate the world of education, and this podcast seeks to bring awareness to those ideas, talk about them, and help implement them in schools across the country. The podcast is produced in collaboration with New Era Superintendents. New Era is an expanding national network of leaders dedicated to doing whatever it takes to deliver proficiency in reading and math to all students. If you're interested in learning more about New Era, head over to newerasuperintendents.com. Our guest today is Sam Feeney. We are so excited to have Sam on the show today. Sam is the author of Choose the Perfect College, Higher Education, Why Aren't You Thriving, and The Career Factors, and has spent more than 20 years as an educator, coach, podcast host, and consultant. He began his journey as an English teacher before transitioning to the school counselor's office, where he developed the Career Factors coaching program in response to the needs of his students in his own search for meaningful work. Sam is the founder of Ecco Education, a company that equips districts with resources and strategies they need to help students reach their potential, leveraging employee engagement and leadership development as keys to student achievement. In his spare time, Sam enjoys reading and collaborating with others to build something new. Sam, his wife, and his 5 children live in suburban Denver, where they enjoy sports and the outdoors. And for our listeners, no, he doesn't like to ski. Sam, what else can you fill in the gaps on that I might have missed in your bio today?
Well, I think I've actually added very recently, in addition to my consulting, I've added an administrative role to my resume, working for a local charter as an assistant principal, and being able to really be able to see more and more what I think is in line with New Era, and the idea that as far away as you are as in the admin seat, you can still have a tangible impact on your students' performance if you can keep that laser focused. And so I'm excited about what New Era is doing, and the message of really being able to say at the very top, if you keep focused on the student performance and kind of fight through all the degrees of distraction between you and that, you can still get it done.
So you've just taken a role as a school administrator. Wow. So you've got a lot on your plate, and that is going to be a new role. Tell us a little bit more. I mean, you were a teacher, you were a counselor, and then you kind of took on this new career. What led to that? And you talk in your bio about meaningful work and your search for meaningful work.
Yes.
What was that journey like for you?
Well, it really came around when I started codifying the career factors, and really the essence of that is the idea of, and this is borrowed largely from Clayton Christensen's book, How Will You Measure Your Life, which is one of my all-time favorites. And he just poses to his capstone MBA course, what if we looked at some of these things differently, right? He goes through the business cycle and studying businesses, and it just poses better questions. That's what I'm always really in the search for personally, is not better answers, but better questions. And so when I developed the career factors, which was career designation by motivation and not by aptitude, because that's one of the things I think we do wrong with kids, is we can develop skills. There can be obviously some, aptitude tendencies, that's fine. But 3 years in, 5 years in, I mean, many of our listeners probably have experienced this where like, yeah, I'm good at this, I don't like it. And so I thought, what if I built a career that was based on what motivated me internally and use that as a series of checkpoints along the way? And that really led to this kind of next iteration. My number one career factor is impact. And I've found in particular this local school, as I got to know them, that it was just a blank canvas for impact. Like it was just a place where I could not only come in and do something, not because I'm great, but just because they've got a desire to grow and change, and then potentially be able to build and grow into a larger school. It's a charter school, so possibilities there for that network. So yeah, it's just kind of finding this part. I joke that after 23 years, I've crossed over to the dark side of administration, and never thought that I would, never had an interest for it. But I am excited about this seat, and even more excited about being able to help school leaders be able to bring engagement into their leadership model.
So that's a big part of what you do with Ecco is engagement, right? And when we think about recruiting talent, recruiting human capital and getting them to stay, like what are some of the trends that you see and what are the things that you're doing to help schools increase engagement and what do you think is kind of the big unlock that you've seen in your experience that's important for schools to be thinking about and for superintendents to be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I talk to superintendents about being the first domino, they have to be aware of and aware of their engagement motivators and actually living them in the seat that they currently have as well, because that's one of the things that if you can do that, then all your leadership stuff becomes authentically that much easier because you're stoking your own fires, right? One of the chapters in my book talks about how career motivation is an inside job, and whether or not you like it, you have agency in this way. It's easier to hope somebody else motivates you in your job, but it really is really important. And so I help schools layer career engagement and career motivation questions into their interview process. I have helped design and actually run their new teacher orientation programming to be able to connect then, hey, let's help you identify what your career motivators are, and then let's connect that to your mentor so that your mentor can be helping just remind you throughout the year, for a new teacher, hey, yes, this is tough. Remember though, you said your number one is growth. Man, you couldn't be in a better spot. Or you said your number one is lifestyle. Let's make sure we're protecting lifestyle while we're building your specific, school year plan and everything. So it's a pretty fully, the last step for me that I'm developing this year is using the career factors as the base for the evaluative model and pulling some of the good stuff from Danielson, but really layering in what the motivation piece does so that it is really teacher-centered.
So I think one thing that people will say about recruiting and retaining quality teachers and job satisfaction, all that is, well, we've got to pay them more, right? Well, of course, I think that's part of it, but when we don't have that funding, how does a school do that more? Like, flesh out, I love what you said about the interview questions and things like that.
This is what I wrote. I wrote a white paper that people can go download for free at eccoeducation.com if they want. It's ECCO if you're listening. But the white paper takes aim at that and says basically there are a few schools who can compete in a salary arms race. So what are you supposed to do if you aren't one of those? Just throw up your hands and say, well, I guess all the good teachers are going to that district. That's not a great play for anybody. Talk about killing morale. But the fun part is the research actually demonstrates that there are two continua for career satisfaction. One of them is career dissatisfaction and one of them is career satisfaction. The money part only lives on the dissatisfaction continuum. And so it's only a dissatisfaction limiter. It is not a satisfaction producer. And now when I saw that, I realized, and this is not new for a lot of people, but this is new for me. And this is what got me fired up about putting this into education was we're playing the game in 2024 with what people were trying to do in the 60s and 70s and didn't work. And especially as generations have changed and people are looking for more things from their job than just money, great. Now I think we actually have, for smaller schools who don't have a ton of money, but they have a great school culture, you're going to attract so many people who are the right people, right? Do you want somebody to work for you just for money? No, not in education, right? I mean, maybe in some other industry, but this, I think is actually a perfect time for schools to say, well, wait a second, the generation of new teachers is actually coming around to the things that we can actually offer them, right? And so when you're aware of those 6 career factors, and there are only 6, it's not a crate. It's like, I love StrengthsFinder, but I can't keep track of 34 strengths. I don't know what they are, right? But as a leader, if I just focus on 6 and I can build my PDs, I can build my school culture around those 6, making sure everyone's taken care of, then all of a sudden I've got a place where people can connect on common career motivators. There's a common language for this, and people walk into this and like, man, something's different about this place. Yeah, intentionally.
So what are those 6 for the strength finders, right? Like how does that embed, and what are some examples that a superintendent or a principal might be able to implement in their leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the 6 are really simple skills, which is kind of like that aptitude base, right? There are still people who, if you know, like in psychology around flow and everything else like that, they do still get motivation from doing their work. So skills is the first, relationships, and then impact, lifestyle, environment, and growth. And so boiled as many of them as down as I could, but being able to then find that. One thing I'm doing with a district and just next month is we're building out PD for their teachers, where the admin are delivering the PD, right? They're personalizing it. So they're taking the ones, they're just splitting up the 6, taking them, and then the teachers, they take the assessment, they figure out what their top 1 or 2 are, and then they can pick to go to those workshops and say, oh, mine's lifestyle. How are we, like, especially from an admin, right? That's kind of fun. How is this admin going to tell me to make sure I get the most out of my lifestyle? Like focus on the non-work part of it so that I can be filled up to go back for work. So it's a lot of an awareness for that. And then an ability to, as I said, monitor throughout for new teachers as well is very, very important. But I think for anybody. So I do like a pre and post every year with schools, just take the quick assessment. Teachers get the results. We are able to track them on the back end to be able to recognize trends and say, hey, 60% of your people are these 3. If you have to focus anywhere, at least focus on these 3, at least know where, your baselines are.
Well, and I think that example that you just shared is a big piece of it for any staff member, anywhere you work, is you have choice, right? So if you have the choice to go and get training about something that's relevant to you, you're naturally going to be more engaged in it. You're going to naturally find more satisfaction. And I think that's a thing that districts have missed over the years is there's a top-down requirement and compliance of you got to go to this and you got to do that and you got to adopt this. But to have that choice is super important. When we think about teacher recruitment, retention, employee engagement, all of those things, it's all related to student achievement. We know that as educators. We know that in our community, in the field of education. When we think about specifically helping students achieve in math and reading, why are these things important to helping students be better math students and be better readers and to be more successful academically?
Yeah, definitely. One of the keys, and there's a growing body of research around this as well, is that how much teacher agency leads to student agency, and as a correlation, teacher engagement leading to student engagement. And we know this from anything. Like you hang out with somebody who long enough who's excited about something, you're like, I mean, I'm at least going to check this out. Like, I don't know what this guy's talking, right? But like just with our friends, like the same things, like if there is that engagement. And what's fun about it is it doesn't have to be for each person. Like, as I said, like maybe for you, like you're just nuts about math, right? And a lot of elementary in particular, think about like 3rd and 4th grade reading levels and how important that is. A lot of elementary teachers aren't necessarily going to be content or subject matter experts, or even like they know it's a package deal, right? Like they get into this for the one particular subject, they got to spread it out. But if they know why they're there, and again, that really gets to the heart of it with career motivation, if they know why they're there, then that provides that context for whatever they're getting into. So if they're filled up, if they're engaged, they prep better, they receive feedback and resources better. What I love about this model is an administrator now has something to talk to the teacher about that's non-evaluative. Right? They just come in and say, hey, your number one's environment. We just got this $500 grant. I'm going to give you $250 so you can buy some more stuff for your classroom. Oh, well, that's cool. Like nothing to do with anything other than, hey, somebody up there likes me, right? I think that's the name of the movie. That always trickles down to the kids, right? Whatever we're talking about, it always trickles down to the kids. And so you can reverse engineer it and really take aim at it and say, I'm going to, like instructional coaching model, student-centered coaching says, we're just focusing on student outcomes. And by the way, we're using teaching to get to those. Mine is more teacher-centric and says, and administrator as well, it says, if you take care of these guys, the kids, you're going to get better results with kids. And so it really is, because what the benefits of a retained staff that gets better over time and gets better is integrated as a team because they just like what they're doing is just such a powerful force. Like that's a tide that a kid, even a really a recalcitrant student, can't overcome. So that's where I really see it. It's still bearing itself out. We're only in year 3, so I don't have as much longitudinal data as I want, but working on it.
Well, you just gave 2 really good nuggets. One is somebody up there likes me, right? Like that could be a leadership book right there, right? Somebody up there likes
that one just came to me, so I'll write that one down.
But that's so true, right? Like I remember being a first year teacher and it's like, oh, somebody up there likes me, and it kind of gave me a little pep in my step, right? There's a psychology of that. And then the recalcitrant student can't overcome, right? Like that is true. You've got a teacher who's dialed in, and that student that has dug in, they're gonna get blown away by that engagement or that enthusiasm, So when we think about your website in Ecco, Ecco Education, you talk about intentional stakeholders. Tell us a little bit of what that means to you. What is an intentional stakeholder, and how do schools and districts build intentional stakeholders in their districts?
Yeah, and I would say in and out. I mean, I think that's like I referred to, hey, there's this $500 grant or whatever. I've worked with a lot of districts who have really strong educational foundations that are, kind of around this, that can come in actually and maybe help a school that says, we want to be able to do more for our teachers who, for whom growth is a big deal. We want to be able to, partner with them maybe to do, on-site trainings, that type of thing. I think a lot of times in professional development, superintendents feel limited because it either is their budget limitations or it all falls to them, and that them would be whoever's in that admin silo to come up with whatever it is. And that's really a daunting task. And I've experienced this as an English teacher. I'd come up with these great assignments and I'm like, well, crap, then I got to grade it. Like, I don't have time for all this. Like, I just passed because I knew it was just me. Right. And so I think a lot of superintendents feel, even though they have a team, that there's going to be a lot of rising and falling on them, or maybe that's curriculum and instruction or somebody like that. So stakeholders can widen the net a little bit for superintendents and school leaders, just to say, okay, we've got, like, I don't have to do this all by myself. One, what I love about what New Era is I can float stuff in this community and say, hey, has anyone tried this before? Because then before I just create the wheel, maybe somebody else has this already. But the stakeholders who are invested in the kids, I think there's a lot in the community that we don't do enough of, including for the kid and for the, let's say, a local business, beginning that line or that thread earlier and showing them how 3rd grade reading and math matters. And I think, we maybe 11th to 12th grade internship stuff. Some people do some pretty good jobs with that. But I think just saying, like, this is a community, like, these are, like, their parents are your customers, those types of things. Like, we can really make that feel like a community and collaborative earlier in the process. It's again, just kind of like a challenge for most of us is when we get a minute to be more proactive than reactive, taking some of these questions into consideration.
Well, one of the trends that we're seeing right now is AI, Chat GPT, all of the things, right? And I was at a conference this summer, and it was something that was talked about, and the presenter was explaining how teachers and leaders need to get their lives back. And one of the ways that they can get their lives back is through Chat GPT, which I thought was an interesting. And the more I've played with it and seeing different advantages and ways you can use it as a tool, what are your thoughts about AI, how it's affecting education, how it's affecting leadership? Can it be used as a tool? Is it helpful? Is there things that maybe we're not thinking about? But I think about employee engagement and stuff. How does it affect your work?
Yeah, I'm thinking more broadly. I've not given a long look at I'll say a shorthand, let's say, for someone who's someone who's coming in new perhaps, and building an employee, like, let's say an interview process, and they don't really have anything. There's a fair amount of that where you can really kind of say, okay, instead of sitting here and coming up with these questions by myself, I could say, what are 10 great questions for an interview for this? You can get really specific for an art teacher, middle school art teacher, who has 5 years experience, because you can tailor it to the resume, right? Like, upload this resume and they do this. There are things you can do for that, just for speed, right? It is like that. I like that's what the speaker said about being able to get your life back a little bit. I think generally for education, one of the things that allows me to kind of approach AI with more of an open hand is I've been teaching long enough when student cell phones and Wikipedia were each, hills people were ready to die on, right? Like we can't have cell phones ever, anybody, you can't use Wikipedia because we have all these encyclopedias on our shelf, like it's not authoritative or, whatever standard we were using back then. AI it's here. It's, here in its most nascent stages. I think one of the things that if I were in the classroom that I would use it for is to teach kids, and it is actually an allusion to what I said earlier, to teach kids to ask better questions, because most people are using it on a very, very surface level, but I have friends who are using it at a very high level because they're creating prompts and sequences, and they're actually, it's almost like another language. And so I think there's, a ton of possibility for really unoriginal student work to come around in the next couple of years. And that's unavoidable. I think, if Turnitin.com or some of these other companies are publicly traded, I'll maybe buy some stock in those and figure out like this AI detection stuff, like how we're going to do that. I think wasn't school originally in large part designed to help kids learn how to use tools better? And I think AI is going to be this other one. Now, of course, we come in very much at a deficit because we don't know what the heck we're doing either. Right. At least I think if we, again, with that open hand, we say, hey, all right, let's just learn. What if we learned together? I think kids would be on board for that. And I don't think teachers would suffer from it either.
That's great. That's great stuff. We're all learning together. And you're right. We're all coming in at a deficit, right? And so my last question for you today, Sam, is you've got a new superintendent who's coming into a district. In light of all of your expertise on employee engagement and everything that you've done, what are some things that you would encourage or just really encourage a new superintendent to consider as they enter into their first year as a superintendent of a district?
Yeah, definitely you're going to be faced with and potentially have a tendency to focus on the hundreds of things that you need to do, quote unquote. Somebody's trying to tell you need this. But I would say keep in front of you your specific and unique reason why you're doing it and allow that to be the context for that. Simon Sinek, he says, start with why and the golden circle that he rolled out in his TED talk. What I offer to superintendents is the career factors for each person to figure out, well, what is my why? Like, what am I trying to do here? And to know how to I think about this as a car battery and an alternator, right? While you're running the battery, the alternator is charging you back up, and thus ends the knowledge of cars. But for a superintendent, he or she needs to know how to keep that fire stoked. And if that is possible, you can figure out everything else. But if you burn out, you're not helping anybody. And so keeping your own personal career motivator in front of you is really, really big, because then you'll have the juice to do whatever those 100 things are that you need to get done.
Yeah, those are good words. Those are relevant. I think relevant to anybody who's going into any level of leadership within education at this time. Well, Sam, I want to say thank you again for joining us for the Thriving Schoolhouse Podcast. Again, to our listeners, this is the Thriving Schoolhouse Podcast. We are so thankful that you joined us today. It is produced in collaboration with New Era Superintendents. Again, New Era is an expanding national network of leaders dedicated to doing whatever it takes to deliver proficiency in reading and math to all students. If you're interested in learning more about New Era, head over to newerasuperintendents.com. If you're interested in learning more about Sam and his work at Ecco Education, you can go to eccoeducation.com. That is ECCO education.com. Sam, thank you again for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you again for your time.
Absolutely, Eric. Great hanging out with you. Talk to you soon.